Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. The 39th TWNIC IP Open Policy Meeting is held as a parallel meeting with ICANN-APAC. And in the afternoon session, we will now proceed to the IP Open Policy Meeting for the Cybersecurity Special Interest Group. In this session, we're going to deep dive into the tactics, practices, and case studies of cybersecurity events and vulnerability handling. The moderator for this session is Dr. Wei-Chung, Chairman of the Department of Computer Science and Information Engineering from National Taiwan University of Science and Technology. Dr. Teng was the commissioner at the National Communications Commission from 2018 to 2022. He was engaged in 5G frequency band auction and 5G private network regulation loosening. His research interests include network communication protocols and cybersecurity. I will now hand the floor to our moderator, Dr. Teng. Dr. Teng, the floor is yours.
Sorry, I didn't, I guess had some trouble finding the switch of the microphone. Okay, thank you everyone for joining this session. And in this session, we have 4 distinguished guests to share their thoughts with us. The first is Mr. Jimmy Gillespie from APNIC, and we have Mr. Jia-Rong also from APNIC. No, I came. Sorry, my bad. Sorry. Yes. But you still remember that Mr. Low also shared his thought at the previous session, and we have Mr. Yamauchi from Panasonic. Uchiyama. Sorry. Yes, that's my one of my talent. I can get drunk without drinking. So we have Mr. Uchiyama from Panasonic Holdings Corporations, and he is also in charge of the cybersecurity issue for their products. And finally, we have Dr. Benson Wu from RE, Cycraft. Yes. And so first of all, some of our guests have prepared their slide. So I think we can go from their speech. Then after all of the guests have shared their thoughts, and we will have some, we can have take maybe a few questions, okay, for this session. So yeah, Jamie, would you start?
Yes, thank you very much. No, all good. Yeah, I've got this. So for my part of the presentation, I do have some slides here. There's more slides than I have time to present. So I will be skipping through some slides, but these slides will be available on the website for you to access later on. But the main points I'm going to be highlighting on the way through is the learnings that we received from this and how this vulnerability program is then useful for others as well. So APNIC started off without having contact information for security issues. We have contact information for many other types of things, for privacy issues, for human resources if you wish to apply for a job, and of course our help desk for the IP addressing issues that people may have. That means, of course, that if people were to try and report security issues to us or vulnerabilities on APNIC's networks and systems ourselves, they sometimes would be misrouted. They sometimes would go to the wrong addresses and they would not be handled consistently. So we decided that we did want to have a point of contact for security researchers in the same way that we enjoy when we need to reach out to others and they have very dedicated contacts. We wanted the same thing. And we decided that if we were going to have these addresses, we need to advertise them somehow. But if we advertise an email address, we do need to set rules around how that address is going to be used so that, again, information doesn't get misrouted on the way through. Now, when you put all of this together, this sounds a lot like what the large commercial companies have as bug bounty programs, where they're offering large sums of money for security vulnerabilities being reported in. But APNIC isn't a large commercial organization like the likes of Google, Microsoft, and Tesla. So can we actually run a similar type of program, but without the bounties that are being provided like the others? So would it actually work? Would people report information to us knowing that there is no bounty, that there is no financial payment available? So we created our vulnerability reporting program, sometimes called a VRP or VDP for disclosure program. We found text from other websites, we compared it, we adapted, we learned from other people's experiences over time. We involved our legal team to make sure that this information is going to be able to be legal for both the other side as well as APNIC. And we worked with our internal IT teams. We made sure that everything was being tracked properly with ticketing systems. We found out who was going to be managing different types of vulnerabilities internally, including the developers that we have that are writing the software, some of the software that we use internally and on our public websites. So going through that process with our developers, we found that we needed to actually inject security checkpoints along the way. We needed to work with the cycle of development and working with the security issues and making sure that they actually have them understood and how it will work. Now, this can cause problems internally for organizations. It caused some issues for us because our developers were on a certain timeline. They had products to create and publish and have them available, and they had key performance indicators or KPIs for that. If they have to spend time fixing security issues, that can have impact on their KPIs. So we had to work with them and make sure that some adjustments were being made internally. Before we actually even published it properly, we actually had someone jump in and send in a vulnerability report. This person found a legitimate vulnerability. They reported it to us before the program was even live, and it was a good way for us to test things out. So thank you to Denny, who was the first security researcher in that space. When we intended for it to go live, we had a blog post, and we published it very quietly. We only did one blog post on our own blog website. We didn't put notifications out on any other websites that we were doing it. We were a bit cautious, making sure that we don't get overwhelmed with too many reports, and things went very well. For the first few months, we only had one report each month, and it started off nice and slow, allowing us to test our procedures and improve on things as we go through. At some point, though, it did catch people's attention, and the popularity went up. These were the number of reports that we received for each month, and you can see as it went to December that we actually ended up going from 1 report a month to 13 reports in the month of December. Possibly some security researchers were home for holidays, or university students were having some extra time during holidays. When we look at this on a cumulative graph, as things were going up with the orange line, in just over the 1 year of operation, we ended up with 81 unique and validated security vulnerability reports that came into us. All of these from security researchers that knew we were not paying any bounties at all, and the most that we could offer them was adding them onto a web page, providing thanks to them for doing the right thing and reporting vulnerabilities privately to us. So this was an excellent program, excellent results from it. This is just a breakdown of some of the technical aspects, so I won't go too deep into these ones, but it looks at the different types and severities of vulnerability. Severities, the priority 1 or P1 is the highest severity vulnerabilities, and P5 is very low level, just basic information to make things better. So it follows a natural graph that you can assume that you're not going to get as many of the critical and high severity issues reported in. One of those priority 1 issues was actually a sensitive data information leak. This was something that was such a critical issue that it actually caused us to go through and follow through with our common practice of being an open and transparent organization and transparently report on this security issue. This was privately reported to us, so we don't believe it was being abused by any malicious actors, but it was open for that possibility. This ended up, as you can see on the slides here, with some news reports, of course, for the news information that we were publishing, but this was not leading through for any abuse of this information because it was privately reported. Also giving a breakdown of the different types of reports and reporters that came in. We had many reporters that just gave us one vulnerability issue and then they moved on, and that was great. But we did have some security researchers that gave us multiple reports. They gave reports on multiple systems and multiple security issues on single systems. Oh, I've lost my clicker. There we go. Beyond the 81 reports, we also received 33 duplicate reports. And this was a learning experience for us on how to handle the duplicate reports, but it shows that multiple people were looking for the same security issues at the same time. So the lessons learned from here is that the security programs like a vulnerability reporting or disclosure program are useful to complement existing tools and practices that you may have internally. Good communication internally and externally was valuable for the program's success, along with the creating of standard operating procedures. Also, the biggest takeaway for this is that bounties and financial payments are not required to launch this type of a program. Obviously, money will incentivize more security researchers, but there are plenty of people that want to do the right thing, even if it means no financial gain for them. So since this program was launched 2 years ago, at about the 1-year mark, we actually were doing a review of the service, a review of how much effort we were putting in, and there are some companies out there that will do outsourcing of these programs. So we went with one of those companies called HackerOne. They receive the reports now, they validate them, they triage, they remove duplicate reports, and then pass the filtered information through us. We then do the internal routing, and things run a lot smoother and reduced effort on APNIC staff. The program's been working really well. We've added things to our scope list. We've added things to the out-of-scope list. We've got a long list of security researchers that we've thanked. And of course, the biggest outcome of this is APNIC as an organization has become more secure. Now, one extension to this program is that recently I, in my role at APNIC, have been doing some research on SMTP mail servers and their use or not proper use of TLS encryption. So basically looking at email encryption from one server to another. As I've been going through that separate research, separate to this presentation here, I've found many weaknesses and vulnerabilities in email servers. And in the process of doing that, I've been attempting to contact these companies to inform them of these security weaknesses. So now I've been working on the other side of this type of vulnerability program. I've been looking to try and find contact information at other companies. I've been looking to see if they are friendly or whether they have tried suing and bringing legal action against security researchers who are trying to see what information vulnerabilities may exist on their systems. And while some of these companies do have these types of vulnerability programs, many of them don't. And I'm left with the same issue and dilemma as security researchers have with APNIC in the past. What email address do I use? Do I contact their privacy officer? Do I contact their human resource department because that's the only address I could find? Do I go to their help desk? Do I have to call a phone number? Do I have to prove that I'm a customer in order to speak with their staff, even though I'm not a customer of those companies? And this is where it leads to the larger issue for vulnerability reporting, is that we need to make sure that for the people that want to do the right thing and report security issues to us, we need to be open to that. We need to provide channels of communication, and we need to provide assurances that those channels will not be misused to send legal action against people that are trying to do security research properly and report issues privately to an organization. So it's been an interesting, very recent issue for me being on the other side of the vulnerability reporting programs. And if we're going to be having a culture of collaboration and cooperation, we need to make sure that security is something that is not just done internally, but something that is open for that external cooperation from people that we don't even know. And that requires publishing information on our websites. It's not enough to just publish a privacy policy. We need to be publishing a security policy and security contact information. So one thing that I would have as an action item for everybody at the session here today is look at your own companies. Put on the hat of a security researcher and visit your own company's websites to try and see, can you find security contact information? Can you find the right people to contact if you found a security vulnerability on your website? Because if we don't act as if we were those external security researchers, then we are not developing our websites and our public information for the right purposes. And that's the end for my presentation.
Thank you, Jamie. So I forgot to introduce, but Mr. Jamie Gillespie is a senior internet security specialist. And he just shared with us how APNIC is dealing with the vulnerability of APNIC itself and how APNIC is able to help the industry to improve tackling on the security issues. So next, I will also want to hear some experience from industry sector. The next one would be Mr. Takayuki Uchiyama, I'm sorry. He is a manager of the Global Promotion Section Product Security and in Global Strategy Department of Product Security Center. And yeah, please.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is, as introduced, thanks for the introduction. My name is Taki Uchiyama. I come from Panasonic, and I work at the Product Security Center. We are in charge of the security of our products, so it's a little bit different. What I'll be talking about here today is probably a little bit different than what we've been hearing throughout the morning and just now. I won't be directly talking about infrastructure. I'll be talking about the actual products that we ship out. So today I'd just like to talk about some of the activities that we go through to raise developer awareness to ensure that our products are more secure when they get shipped out. So I'll skip this introduction. I currently work at Panasonic. I used to work at JP CERT Coordination Center. My background in security mostly focuses around the coordination of vulnerabilities, sort of what just Jamie just talked about, sort of coordinating vulnerabilities and speaking to vendors and so on and so forth. And now I'm part of the vendor side, or the industry side, to the ingestion part of the vulnerability reports. So what we do at Panasonic, so product security within Panasonic, we have this page. It's part of our, what used to be called our CSR, our corporate social responsibility document. There is a section on product security. And within that, the first section, as highlighted here on the right-hand side of the slide, we promise to our customers that we provide training to our employees to make sure that they are up to date on product security. So what do we do to do that? So these are some of the pillars that we have. We have sort of minimizing risk and raising awareness at the bottom. We want to make sure our products are secure. So today I'll focus on the bottom part, is to provide, as far as providing basic knowledge on product security as a base core for all of our product developers, so that we can achieve at the top a secure network connected embedded devices, systems, services, or whatever we provide to our customers. So to do that, we provide trainings across the entire product development lifecycle. Sure, you've seen this model from, Microsoft was one of the first ones that came up with this, the secure development lifecycle. We provide trainings throughout each of the phases. So at the bottom here, you have sort of the base awareness. It closely mimics basic cybersecurity training with a little bit of a product security twist to it. And then we have various trainings across the life cycle that cover different topics within product development. For example, analyzing threats that may arise within a product or a system to be deployed, talking about secure design principles, and we also talk about how to do assessments or looking for vulnerabilities or addressing vulnerabilities before they get shipped out. And we also talk about incident response from more of a product security perspective. And right now, we deliver our contents in 3 different ways. Before pre-COVID, we delivered we delivered all of our content on site. So we had, including myself, we had team members travel to the various development sites across the world to actually deliver the various trainings that we have. Since COVID, we've kind of transitioned into more of a Teams online, where we do trainings through using Microsoft Teams, and we also have a e-learning or self-learning platform where developers can go on at any time they want and they can view the material. And just one of the things that I wanted to go over before I move on to my next topic is that there were a lot of considerations that we had to think about when developing all of these training contents. We are a very large company, and we provide many, many products and services that cover a lot of different sectors. So we needed to come up with we needed to think of different ways to develop contents that covered a lot of different topics in a very generic way. But also, as the training curriculum itself has matured a little bit over the past couple of years, we've gotten more and more requests to cover different aspects of what each development team is actually producing. For example, like automotive has certain sets of requirements. Heating, ventilation, air conditioning, that type of stuff, they have their own requirements. So we're getting requests from different teams now that are looking for certain requirements within the training material, so that they're hearing what they need to hear to develop more secure products to satisfy their customer requirements. And then also, one of the things that we've piloted over the past 6 months are more hands-on classes, so that our developers can actually play around with some stuff from a security standpoint. The important part to note here is that we're not here to train hackers. We're not asking them to discover vulnerabilities, but we want them to understand what a vulnerability is, how it can be triggered, and how to actually mitigate that before it goes out, ideally. So those are some of the things that we do from a training perspective. And then the other topic I wanted to go through is it's a little bit different from the training. it's called our Astera project. It's a platform to strengthen IoT home electronic security. The naming of the project itself comes from Ashura. It's a mythical character in Buddhism. And also TI is the threat intelligence, and that's Astera. And what this platform is it's basically it's a honeypot. It's a physical honeypot with some software aspects to it to collect data on IoT threats. So what we do is we collect data on attacks, malware against IoT electronics, and we want to make sure that our products are secure so we can use that data. So one of the things, the impetus to start this project itself is actually right here. From a incident response perspective, we have always been reliant on external researchers sending us vulnerability reports or internal developer actually finding something when they develop a new version or something like that. So when we asked ourselves the question, is it okay to rely on external organizations for vulnerability information, naturally the answer came out to no, we want to make sure we find this stuff, or we're proactively finding at least some of this stuff so that we can more secure our products better. So what does this whole project do? As I mentioned, it's a honeypot project, so I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with sort of the inner workings or what to do with honeypot data. But what we do here is we collect data. That's the first part. Actually, I should transition to this slide. So we collect data. We have a showroom. We have a showroom here, actually, locally here in Taiwan. And we actually have a showroom in Osaka at our headquarters. So we actually have Panasonic devices connected directly to the internet, and we are collecting data on attack attempts against these products. The next part is after that data comes in, as you can probably imagine, we analyze the threats against these products. If there's anything that's going on, or are there any imminent threats to our products that we need to notify our developers or our development teams that actually ship those products? And then moving to the bottom right, we want to make sure that that information gets to the developers so that they can develop and take countermeasures to ensure that the products are actually secure. And one of the things that we would like to do is to, as part of the previous presentation, was to better prioritize these threats so that not everything is being treated the same. And that's something that we're looking to do a better job with the data that we currently have. And then the end goal, obviously, is to make sure that we have a stronger organization from a product security standpoint. So we want to make sure we're utilizing this data in an effective way so that we can strengthen our organization, make sure that our products are more secure. We can actually say that, we can publicize that our products are secure because of this, this, and this. And hopefully that's our goal for this. And one of the things that we're looking to do, and this is sort of on the docket, this is sort of an experimental phase type of thing, but ideally we'd like to be able to come up with some sort of a self-defense mechanism to say if a piece of malware comes into a device, to figure out a way to say, hey, I don't like that malware, sort of stop it from actually infecting a device. Not sure if we can do that, but seeing if we can do something like that to proactively protect especially our customers of our home electronics. Our corporate products that go into corporate infrastructure, they have CSIRTs, they have teams that can address threats. But my home users, like for example, my father at home, he has no idea how an internet-connected refrigerator works. So ideally, we would like him to do nothing, and the product itself kind of takes care of itself for him, is sort of the idea behind this, the concept behind this idea. And this is just the last slide, just to show you the whole thing again. And that's the end of my talk. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Uchiyama. And okay, so Panasonic has just demonstrated how their customer and the consumers get protected by using their product. However, the next guest I would like to invite is Dr. Benson Wu. Dr. Benson Wu is the founder of Cycraft, and in his Chinese name, Aoyi Keji, is well known as the most famous cybersecurity company in Taiwan. And so Benson, we have APNIC to help industry, and we also have a big company like Panasonic that can defend their customers well. And so how should we need cybersecurity company like Cycraft? Yeah, your turn, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. And I'm Benson, the CEO and founder of Cycraft. Very honored to be here. So my company built AI copilots to help our customer to fight against attacker. So the AI copilot help the customer to investigate, to analyze alerts, and then to come up with a remediation plan, how they can fix the problem. So today, I'm going to share the experience, why AI is so important in this journey, and then why we start talking about cyber resilience rather than cyber security. And resilience is very important now. Not previously, but now it's inevitable. So it's an urgent pain right now, cyber resilience. But why? The number one reason is because hackers now have all your data, and then they will put online. Previously, when you have a data stolen, if you didn't tell anyone, or if you didn't know, nobody knows. But now the hacker, when they steal your data, they put it online. So even if you don't tell anyone, everyone knows. And I'm using an example, using Taiwan as an example. So this is the hackers forum. And then you can see every post is about a data leakage of maybe an organization, maybe a school, maybe a private company, maybe some e-commerce, maybe some HR websites. For example, we all write resume looking for jobs. So we put a lot of details in our resume. So hacker is very interested in knowing everyone's resume, which special project you participate, which special task you are involved. All these are very information rich in your resume. And attackers are now selling all these sensitive data on the dark web. So that's why I say, even if you didn't know, or even if you didn't tell others, it will become the news headline. So now everyone needs to look at cybersecurity in a very serious manner. And then the number two reason is security breach is not if, but it's when. In other words, it will be breached sooner or later. So it's not embarrassed to be breached. But if you didn't react, if you didn't respond fast enough, then it's very shameful. So it's okay to have a breach, but if you respond fast, respond responsibly, then the damage can be very minimized and controlled. So that's why we started to mention resilience rather than saying, oh, I have to do 100% cybersecurity. Then this mindset of I cannot accept there's going to be a breach, gonna damage your security culture in the company. So the new security culture should be, it's okay to be breached, but we need to be resilient to minimize the damage. And when I say it will be breached, I also show you the evidence. The regulation now, for example, this is GDPR. And GDPR, they give a lot of fines when you didn't follow the regulations. And then when they do the inspection, they also found out you have very irresponsible mistakes. then they give you a very big fine. There are already 400 cybersecurity related fines in the past 5 to 6 years. And the highest one could be as high as 27.8 million euros. That's a lot of money. And even for individuals, you might think, oh, that's only for the big company. I'm only the administrator for a small website. What kind of fine would I receive? Yes, we will also be accountable if you also make a mistake and dig other people's data, personal data, onto the website for attackers to possess. So the one I show on the right is the fine against an individual, like 200 euros to some website owner. So this again, previously we say, even if you don't care, but the data cannot be exposed by the attacker, now it's that even if you don't care, the law and also the regulator is going to go after you because you hurt other people's data and you will receive fines. So once again, you have to face cyber resilience, whether or not you like it or not. There's a regulation, there's a fine. And then I also do this study that how many ransomware are there in the whole world. Yeah, so because this is now also damaging your business continuity. The business is going to shut down because of ransomware. Your factory cannot produce product because of ransomware. And how I get these numbers is by looking at the post that is posted by the hacker. So when hacker, they compromise your company and then they give a ransom, send a ransom note to you, and then you refuse to pay, they're gonna post this on their website. And then they say, okay, the clock is ticking. In 24 hours, if you don't pay me, I'm going to leak all your data. And that is how we collect all these ransom posts every day. And then I calculate how many ransom notes are there in the entire world. So last year, there were about 3,240 in the entire world. It means 3,240 companies got compromised with our ransomware. And then out of this, 22 are Taiwan-based. And apparently, this is not the exact real number, how many got ransom. Why? Because remember, I share with you, if you don't pay, they would threaten you and then put this post. But if you pay, then they wouldn't put this post. So if you settle, then you wouldn't be on this ransom post, right? But if you refuse to pay, then they try to threaten you. So they put it online and then clock is ticking. And then I'm going to show you an example. So on the left-hand side, that's the attacker's blog. And then in the middle, you see, oh, there's a Taiwan company got threatened. So the date was late last year, November 2022. And then the attacker say, okay, we compromise your website, compromise your company, and then we ransom on November 7. But you didn't want to pay. So they threatened that, okay, a week later, we're gonna leak all your data, which is November 16. And apparently, that victim refused to pay. So eventually, all the data is published. And then on the right-hand side is their public announcement by the company, which is the victim. So on December, they put out this public announcement that they were compromised by ransomware. And I show you this case also to remind you, maybe we feel this company is responsible, but if you look at the timeline, they also have to be responsible because now all this information are available on the dark web, on the internet. So everyone would know when they really got compromised. And if later on they didn't make any announcement, they are not being responsible to their stakeholder, to their investor. So being responsible for the cyber breach and then being fast enough to respond is now a very important attribute to today's business owner. And then now I will move on to AI-driven. Why AI so important now? Okay. And it's because of three pain, and that push AI is so important. The number one pain is now attacks is becoming a commodity. Anyone can use AI to write malware. Anyone can go to dark web to buy malware. Anyone can go to dark web to buy personal data. And they all use bitcoins, cryptocurrencies. So it's very hard to trace. So now attacks are becoming very affordable. So you cannot expect that, oh, I'm a small company, the attacker wouldn't attack me. No, they use automated tools. So attacks are everywhere. Whether you are a big company or mom and pops, small companies, you will all be attacked sooner or later. And now in the middle is, now because of the attacks, we started to buy more products. We started to buy more capability. So there are so many alerts coming in, becoming alert fatigue. And then you need more security people to help your company to investigate these alerts. So that creates new problem as well, alert fatigue and also talent shortage. And then lastly, on the right-hand side, now we have the AI hype. And because of AI, you have even more affordable attack because bad people are also using AI. Okay, and then because of AI, you have even more product that can give you more alerts because they are now even more aggressive, more sensitive. So whether AI really help you solve the problem or AI is creating even more problem, you need to think about it. Is AI giving you more detection efficacy? But detection efficacy is the vendor's problem, it's not your problem. So whether they use AI or not use AI, they have to give you a good enough product. But if the AI is not helping you with efficiency, meaning that, oh, I spend even more time because of AI, I cannot go home on time because of AI, because of security, then the AI is not really improving your security operation. And I try to give you a end-to-end understanding. What is it doing security operation? So what does the security team do every day? So every day they need to visit all the cyber assets of the company. The cyber assets could be device, could be application, could be network, could be user accounts, could be the data. All these cyber assets, they have to review on a daily basis. Otherwise, they wouldn't know if there are any anomaly. So on the left-hand side, you will see it's a very crazy spaghetti. But that's the very ugly fact of our cyber assets. That's how complicated it is. And then among these cyber assets, you want to find anomaly. And because you want to find anomaly, you have to write a lot of rules. You have to have a lot of maybe AI capability so that you can spot anomaly. And all these anomaly, I give you some rational example, like 4,000 alerts. So these 4,000 alerts, you need to validate and then to confirm whether they are false alarm or they are true positive. Once you validate, then you need to put them into a story, put into an attack path, because you need to explain to your manager what's the incident like. And then eventually you need to review how you can avoid repeated attack, how you can improve next time so that you wouldn't be attacked by the same reason, by the same root cause. All of this, if you don't have high technology to help you, it's going to be very labor intensive. That's why I put a conclusion. I say attackers spend minutes or hours to attack you. But you as a defender, you spend days and weeks to fix. So this is not a very fair competition. So we have to change this challenge. And the only way to do this is to use AI as much as possible so that it can be more scalable. And the already spaghetti can be even worse when you also consider supply chain, meaning that you also need to consider the security of your suppliers. They also interact with your company. Typically, for a large enterprise, the suppliers could be hundreds of suppliers. And that's a very scary number because they also give you data, they log on to your network, they interact with you on a daily basis. So they could also be the weakest point for attackers to compromise your network. And then lastly, I'd like to share with you that now we have a ChatGPT. I foresee that this kind of generative AI is going to be everywhere to help us to co-work with you. So I'm in the cybersecurity space. The AI Copilot can co-work with the security members to discuss what's the context, what's the command line, what's the syntax, what's the attacker trying to do. All these interactions could be between human and the AI. So it's very interesting that among your security team, there's a AI, not a human being, but an AI team member that is in the team. So I call this going to be the new norm very soon. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Benson. So you mentioned at first about the data leakage on personal information, sensitive data, and then you jump next to the AI-based cybersecurity resilience. And finally, you mentioned about the AI-added Copilot. Yeah, and just curious, if I want to know the real Taiwanese company got attacked by ransomware, what's your wild guess?
Yeah,
according to your slide, it was 22, right? It's a reported number.
Yeah. Most of these 22 are listed company, IPO company, big company, 22. Yeah, my guess is should be like 50. So they are like maybe 30. They settle. They settle with the attacker, or they didn't report.
Wow, what a relief! Originally, I thought it was 220.
That's the listed company in Taiwan. It's 1,700. Yeah, 1,700. So I think last year should be maybe 50 in total, and only 22 report. Yeah.
Yes, and I think that yes, cybersecurity company. Yes, is we really need cybersecurity company to protect the industry sector and governments and people's life. So until now, we listen. We learned some experience from APNIC, also from Panasonic and Cycraft. So the last thing I would like to maybe ask the opinion of Mr. Jia-Rong. He is Vice President and Managing Chair in Asia Pacific region in ICANN. Yes, and we know. I know that Mr. Lo, you have many years of experience, especially when you stay in Singapore, to dealing with multi-stakeholder issue. Including the internet governance, and I think you must know many regulations from different governments, and I think that especially after we learn the new trend of AI-based attack, so what's your suggestion to Taiwan government and maybe the other government? Yeah.
Thank you. Just thinking about my fellow panelists and what they've shared, I think I'll share a couple of other areas. First, then I'll come back to talking about government and collaboration. I think a number of members of the audience are probably ISPs or network operators yourself, considering you're part of the IP open policy meeting. So I'll share a couple of areas. So the first one is ICANN, we are actively promoting a self-assessment for some DNS best practices. So if you'd like to see how you are faring, you can just Google KIN DNS. Google KINDNS. At ICANN, we just like to call it kindness, just so that it's easier to remember. So it's KINDNS. Basically, it has a set of best practices that network operators can follow. But it comes with a self-assessment tool. So if you go online and you look at it, you can just look at the self-assessment and just fill it in, see how you are doing. And if you're not doing very well, you don't need to tell anybody. You can work on those items yourself if you like to. But actually, if you need any help from ICANN, we like to partner with different partners. So here on 2 days ago, we had a training that's organized by TWNIC, who helped us do that. So we're also happy to organize other training related to DNS operations and DNS security. So if you need any help, let us know. So that's one small shout out. The other one tied to just general practices related to cybersecurity. I think I really appreciate the new term. I like the term cyber resilience. It's really much a better term. I think it also helps people not be so scared or afraid of the term security. Where internally for ICANN as an organization, very interestingly for us, we made it a strong point to all staff that most of cyber incidents occur from human or social behavioral issues rather than the technology itself. So things like leaving your information or passwords unprotected, not looking after some of your laptops, not changing your password regularly enough, accidentally clicking on a link, either from an SMS or others. I think these best practices still apply, but a couple of key points I wanted to highlight. I think the first is, from a more strategic perspective, does your organization have someone playing the role of a CISO? CISO. We call it the Chief Information Security Officer. It doesn't need to be a formal role per se, but there has to be today someone in every organization to be playing this kind of a role. It's the same, like, if you have a physical asset, you will think of some security, right? Like, if you need to, you hire some person to look after the physical security. You will pay someone who will lock the door, and so on. Likewise, in every organization today, you should have someone who plays that role as well, so a CISO role. The link to that is Mr. Uchiyama's point about internally. That same role will have to make sure there's enough awareness and also training. And actually, within ICANN, we do have a team that looks after this. And it's very interesting because occasionally they will send fake phishing emails to the staff just to test you. And then after you accidentally click the link, they'll say, surprise, actually it's a test phishing. But that kind of exercise raises a lot of awareness for staff, and it reduces the number of problems for us internally. So there's the training aspect and also the awareness raising aspect internally. I think every organization should have a person playing a CISO role. Now, why I say this at this point, it ties into the next broader point about how governments are looking at the whole issue of cybersecurity. So there are two parts. From a government's perspective, there are two parts. One is internal as well as external. So the external was quite straightforward, like Benson was sharing, right? Basically, regulation, put the responsibility on organizations, find them if you need be. Somebody must be responsible, as long as it's not me. Now, the flip side of it is, of course, internally. Governments realize that cybersecurity is a thing, something you cannot run away from. And every government, if you want to look at it, should also have an agency, either a specialized agency for the whole government, or every government agency internally needs to have someone who plays a CISO role. So if the government is not doing that, then they are very far behind. But most governments are building that capability as we speak at this point. So even for Singapore, in fact, we were not very early in the game, I would say. Just a few years ago, we established a cybersecurity agency. I think it was like maybe 2016, 2017. Not very long ago. but a lot of other governments are only playing catch-up now. So those agencies will have to play the role of a CISO for the whole of the government. And that helps, but it will take some time for them to develop the capabilities. And this is where I'm going to tie into multi-stakeholder collaboration, because there are many organizations existing that are facilitating collaboration, but many of them are actually industry, and they form a kind of self-regulating group. So there are a number of groups like that. Some of them also involve government agencies. One of them, APNIC, and apricot meetings, you host them. It's called FIRST. So they are the Forum and Incident Response and Cybersecurity Teams. So the acronym for them is just FIRST. That is a grouping for certs and CSIRTs to come together. So groupings like these are quite important. I think one key aspect that's missing is kind of like what Jamie is sharing. These groups like to be very closed groups. So they don't like to share a lot of information outside of the groups. Some of it is because the issues are very sensitive, and it's especially from an Asian culture. If something like that leaks out, then the loss of face is one issue. But increasingly, collaboration probably is still the best tool for us going forward when it comes to cybersecurity. And from a strategic perspective, we should explore how to better collaborate with one another, especially when we are able to predefine the role of a CISO, whether it is for a government or whether it is for your own organization. So the CISOs themselves would have a kind of network that allows them to collaborate in a better way. Now, one last point I'll make quickly is just we can apply some of the internet governance architecture or structure to how we want to approach cybersecurity. So within the internet governance structure, you can look at two broad models of architecture. So one is intergovernmental, and the other is multi-stakeholder model. And actually, they are not mutually exclusive. So if we want to look at approaching cybersecurity, we should look at both and not just one. So the multilateral alliance, you can see various alliances in the ITU or amongst governments. They find ways to collaborate with one another. There are some pros and cons to this model naturally, because if you work something at the national level, they're very fast. But it's not very well coordinated. And the other issue with regulation is there could be unintended consequences, and especially if the governments themselves have not stepped up their capabilities, which requires resources and time. So there's something that's lacking. Where the gap can be filled is that multi-stakeholder structure, where we have a platform that allows for more collaboration between governments and the industry. Now, I don't think that there are that many that's been set up at this point, and that I think is a clear gap globally. But we can learn from groupings like I mentioned first. There are others like the Anti-Phishing Working Group. Within the US, there's the National Cyber Forensics and Training Alliance. We have to start thinking about these groups. How can we apply them within the region? And leveraging on this kind of a partnership, then perhaps we could strengthen a few points that we need to really work on when it comes to cybersecurity. So a few areas are better early warning systems, better mutual monitoring, so kind of like a vulnerabilities program, but across organizations, verification. Like I said, these issues are very sensitive, so it's better to have a closed group, but that you have verified everybody amongst the group themselves. And the fourth one is on regular and high-level communications. So some high-level points when it comes to applying for thinking about collaboration, and whether it is working within your own organization, providing a service to governments, or working across governments. As a global architecture, I think these are some basic principles that we can all work together on to really bolster our cyber resilience. And with that, I will close. Thank you.
May I ask one more question? Yes, you mentioned that collaboration is essential to fight against cybersecurity, but I'm considering that to conduct the effective collaboration, and one of the prerequisite conditions is that everyone is trust others. Yes. So if one of the main role is government, how may the government gain the trust of the industry or private sectors?
That's a good one. So I think there are two parts to this. So the first is a principle I kind of talked about earlier, which is the principle of verification. So you pre-verify with one another, is this actor or person that's requesting information from you the legitimate person? So actually within ICANN, we are working on this right now because we too were impacted by the GDPR, because the EU GDPR requires us to redact personally identifiable information on our system called WHOIS. WHOIS basically tells you who is the registrant for what domain name. So actually in the past, if like, you know, I used to use this example because it's easy to understand, like the former President Obama, he has Obama.com. So if you go to WHOIS and you type Obama.com, you can actually see who registered the domain name. Now, under the EU GDPR, if this person is an EU citizen, this information can no longer be found. You can no longer access it publicly. Now, it seems okay, it's not a big deal, but actually it's a big deal because law enforcement agencies use the WHOIS system to find out, if as the first port of call, to find out like if there is a certain website that's hosting like CSAM, like child pornography, or illegal pharmaceuticals. The law enforcement agency will use the WHOIS system to see whether they can actually locate this person. So if it's a person in Taiwan and it's a problem in Taiwan, the law enforcement agency could immediately try to get a court order to go after this person. Or if it's an illegal issue immediately, like a CSAM or illegal pharmaceuticals, they could work with the local registrar to take down the website immediately. So actually, this is a big deal. Now, with the EU GDPR, this became a problem because law enforcement agencies, when they want to do investigations, they can no longer do so directly. So what they have to do is, okay, maybe they have 5,000 websites they are researching, and they need to find the registrant information. They have to write to the individual registrars to ask for the information. Now, Interpol has complained to me before. Each time they do 5,000, 10,000, they have to write 5,000 or 10,000 emails. They spend their whole life writing emails. It takes up all their time. So one policy that ICANN worked on was how can we expedite this faster? So the idea is a new system. So it's a registration data request system. Basically, we pre-accredit all the law enforcement agencies, and they would have an account in a centralized system. When they request for the information from registrars, the registrars doesn't need to verify it's this person. So this agency naturally is already verified. So that builds the trust through a certain system. So likewise, when we think about collaboration from a broader perspective, if we do it in a loose way without establishing a certain structure or the architecture, that's where the trust is hard to build. But we have to find a way amongst ourselves, and I don't have the answer for it. But seeding this amongst all of us, because each of us have a role to play. How can we build a structure, an architecture, where we can already pre-verify each other and share information accordingly? And with that, then we can build the trust. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we have still 3 minutes, so maybe we can take one question from the audience. Any question? Okay. In fact, before this session start, I told my panelists, I say, I promise, I I will end this session on time. So thank you for collaboration. Yes, so I think... so.
Thank you very much, Dr. Deng, for moderating the session, and thank you to all panelists for this very wonderful session. We would like to invite all panelists and the moderator to please come to the front for a group photo. All right, so maybe that's okay? Okay, so please look at our photographer and the big smile. Thank you. Thank you very much. Please take your seat downstage, and thank you once again for this lively panel discussion. Thank you.